Well, first of all, I just wanted to say good morning and welcome. I am Tara Tomsic, President and CEO of the Troy Chamber of Commerce, and I wanted to welcome you to our very Your City, Your County, Your State, and You. This is going to be an in-depth conversation around local business and business throughout the county and the state as well. We have a jam-packed program, so I will be very, very quick. But I did want you to invite... Teresa, do you have the slide thing? Yeah. Perfect. I didn't know what was going on, so I was just asking questions, guys. But I wanted to invite you to join our conversation on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and use today's event hashtag YourTroyBiz on social media. I'd also like to thank our Platinum members located on the slide behind me. They are truly dedicated to the Troy business community, and we are beyond grateful for their continuous support. Please give them a round of applause. And this event could not happen without the support of our event sponsors. So I'd like to thank our visionary sponsors, Mahindra Automotive, Oakland University, and Raymond. And I love that I didn't have to ask for the applause part, so thank you guys. And finally, our connecting sponsors, DTE, Imagine Entertainment, Oakland Community College, and SMART. As this is our first large event of the year, I wanted to also acknowledge and thank our 2019 Board of Directors, but I would also like to announce our 2020 Board of Directors at this time. We have listed their names and companies behind me. As you see, we have some fantastic leaders who will be helping to guide the future of the Troy Chamber of Commerce. Let's give them a warm welcome. And finally, we have a really fun part of the day that we do in the beginning of our meetings. So I would like to introduce our 2019 Board of Directors Chair, Lisa Burden from Lynchpin Law, to join me on stage for the ceremonial passing of the gavel. Lisa worked tirelessly to help drive the mission of the Troy Chamber of Commerce. We are grateful to her and the entire 2019 board, and I'd like to invite Karen to join her. As Lisa's term ends, we would like to pass the gavel to our 2020 board chair. This is for real. Our 2020 board chair, Karen Minardo of Vacker Chemical Corporation. Karen has been a very active board member for the past 3 years, and we have no doubt that she and the 2020 board will drive the mission of the chamber and its members to a successful and prosperous 2020. Thank you, Karen, and I welcome you to share a few words to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you to our board chairs. See, I told you that was the fun part.
I am not a cartoon character, although this is a lot of fun. It is not as heavy as it looks like. So thank you very much to Lisa for your leadership during 2019 and your mentorship of me. Appreciate that. I'd also like to thank Tara and the staff, Jody, Sheila, Teresa, and Tracy, who may not even be in the room because they're so busy doing other things. Teresa's over here, of course, doing her marketing role, but they all do an amazing job. And if you're not aware, for a good part of 2019, we were searching for Tara, and the staff managed through that, doing amazing work to support all of our membership. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate that. I'm looking forward to an amazing year. There's a lot of things going on that people care about. The Troy Chamber is doing things to support the business community. I've been involved for several years, and if you haven't been involved and you're not a member yet, I would encourage you to look at that and consider becoming a member. I'd actually consider you to be future former non-members, if you will, because you'll find such value as I have and as our board members have in the chamber. And with that, I'm trying to keep it brief as well. I know they have a jam-packed schedule. It's my honor to introduce Lieutenant Governor of Michigan, Galvin Gilchrist. Bringing Michigan's state government fully into the 21st century is a top priority for Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist. He brings a lifetime of experience to the task, receiving his first computer at age 5 and starting up a computer lab in the community recreation center using computers that he built himself at age 16. Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist studied computer engineering and computer science at the University of Michigan, graduating with honors, and later had a successful career as a software engineer at Microsoft, helping to build SharePoint into the fastest growing product in the company's history. During his time in Seattle, Gilchrist served as social media manager for the 2008 Obama campaign in Washington, where he helped launch a national text message program to recruit volunteers, and that worked incredibly well, very successful. He later served as the first director of new media at the Center for Community Change in Washington, D.C., and spent 3 years as national campaign director at MoveOn.org. A native of Detroit, Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist's parents are also proud lifelong Detroiters. His mother worked at General Motors for 32 years, and his father worked in defense contract management for the Department of Defense. His family has been active in the community, including leadership roles within their local church, as well as other neighborhood associations. Lieutenant Governor Galvin Gilchrist and his wife Ellen currently do reside in Detroit, where they're raising their twins, Emily and Garland III, and their newborn 8-month daughter, Ruby. So it's my pleasure to introduce our Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist.
All right, good morning, everybody. So first off, I've never seen a gavel that big. And so in this job, I preside over the state senate, so I get to learn a lot about gavels. I broke a couple of them last year, and I would have to swing that one like really hard. But I might need to, because in case y'all haven't heard, sometimes the legislature gets out of hand. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I want to thank you, Karen, for the introduction. I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank the Oakland County executive for hosting me again in Oakland County. You know, it's funny. So I live in Detroit now, and I am a Detroit native. But as what may not have been clear, I spent the second half of my childhood in Oakland County. I lived in Farmington. I graduated from Farmington High School in the year 2000, and I saw Jenkins everywhere in here. Jenkins and I known each other since middle school at Power, and so it's nice to be able to call multiple parts of the state of Michigan home. And I definitely feel at home when I am here in Oakland County, and I'm glad to be here with you at this event. From what all that I've heard, is an amazing group, an amazing institution, this chamber that does really good work for this community, and that is really a model for other chambers across the state. So I bring greetings this morning on behalf of Governor Gretchen Whitmer as well, and I want to talk today about a few things, really talk about some of the priorities that we have for this year. And one of the ways that you can understand or that you can see, or what the most clear articulation of an administration's priorities, that's usually reflected in its budget. And that's true for most organizations. That's true for all of your businesses. Like if you see what your business is investing in this year, that will show you what is important to your business in this coming year. So the same thing is true for the state of Michigan. So I want to walk through, at least at a high level, what our budget priorities are and what sort of the anchor components of that, just so you have an understanding of what we are trying to work toward in the state of Michigan this year, these types of long-term investments we are trying to begin and put down, and also to ask you for your help as we advocate for these things which we believe are important not only to this region, but to the entire state of Michigan. The first thing I'm going to talk about is surprising. It's really surprising, and it has to do with roads. I got caught in traffic on the way up here. I-75 is under construction, in case you haven't heard. Y'all might not have heard. But that's because I-75 was a mess. A lot of roads in the state of Michigan have been a mess for a long time. I won't tell you how old I am, but I will say that there are a lot of roads in Michigan that have been bad since before I was born. And that is not just an issue of annoyance, that is actually an issue of public safety. In the Lansing area, actually, just late last week, there was a woman who was injured when a piece of concrete fell off of a crumbling bridge and hit her car. She was hospitalized. It's something that happens to too many people in our state, where the state of our roads creates danger for people. So last year, we put forward a plan to address that problem in a comprehensive manner. When I talked about needing to swing that big gavel for the legislature, they did not come to the table to work with us. So this year, though, we still need to do things on behalf of the people of Michigan. We were elected to get things done. So this year, as you heard the governor announce in the State of the State address, we've put forward a proposal that will jumpstart construction and fixes on state truck line roads. That's like a technical way to say big freeways. There are some freeways that are in massive need of not just repair, but actually full-blown reconstruction. And the distinction that I want to make there is you can fill a pothole, or you can rebuild the street so it'll be good for the next 30 years. And unfortunately, we've put our professionals at the Michigan Department of Transportation in a position, by not giving them resources, to have them only put Band-Aids on these potholes, rather than being able to make the fixes and the investment that we truly need. So this proposal that we put forward, we did it really for 4 reasons. One is that this is about keeping drivers safe. There are roads and bridges that are in desperate need of reconstruction, and this project will enable us to pull those projects forward and get started on them right now. This will save the state of Michigan money in the long run. So whether this is based on issuing bonds to fund these road projects, $3.5 billion in bonds to be precise. Now, when you talk about issuing bonds, that is a long-term investment. It's a long-term investment. And we understand that issuing bonds is not a complete solution. There are a lot more roads to fix in Michigan than $3.5 billion of bond money can fix. But the reason that we're making this investment right now is, one, you're business people, you understand interest rates, you understand that we are in an advantageous moment in time to make this sort of long-term investment. But also, when we are investing in fixes that'll extend the life of our roads by 25 to 30 years, it makes sense to make a long-term investment in long-term reconstruction. This will also let us get to work right now, because we have the authority as the administration to issue these bonds to work on state roads, and I'll come back to why it's only on state roads. Because we have that authority, we can get to work right now, this construction season. It actually enables us to accelerate the progress in a number of projects that MDOT knows needs to happen, but we're not able to happen because the resources were not available. We're actually going to be able to fit about 9 years worth of construction projects into this 5-year window, accelerating our progress. And finally, this particular plan involves no increase in pay at the pump. You also know that last year when we introduced our budget proposal, the one that was comprehensive, the one that addressed all of the roads in the state of Michigan, that did require an increase in the gas tax. This plan does not do that. I want to give you a sense, this might be hard to see given the light, but this is just giving you a sense of projects in southeast Michigan, in our broader region, that will be able to, these freeways will be able to be reconstructed. They'll be able to be fixed in the right way, not papered over, not band-aided, but fixed in the right way, in a long-term way, because of this investment that we are infusing into our system. I want to reiterate, so this is not about the number of road miles fixed. This is about making the right choices and doing the right level of investment in our infrastructure so we can have quality fixes in our roads that are long-term. And then we can get on a path of preventative maintenance rather than responding to broken streets. If we do this in the right way, this will help, we believe, reinitiate the conversation around what it would take to make a comprehensive investment in our roads. Because it's true, this leaves out a lot of streets. For example, the ones you drive on to get to the freeway. And my thinking on this, though, is that as people continue to see construction on the freeway, they're going to be able to thank this administration for stepping up and getting started. But as you drive on those troubled roads, that I know the county executive is trying to work to get some money for here in Oakland County, and I appreciate that work. But as you're driving on those troubled roads and you're saying, wow, this one's still bad, the road I got to take to get to the doctor or the grocery store or to drop my kid off at school, if your car happens to be in the shop as a result of driving on that road, when you are sitting in the waiting room, feel free to call a Republican. Ask them to come to the table to please negotiate with us. because we want a full solution too. But that takes us working together. So we're doing what we can now with the authority that we have, and then we need to work together to find something comprehensive. And I think we can get that done. I want to talk about some of the other priorities in the budget, because this piece on the bonding is one part, but these are really the core tenets of our budget for this fiscal year. When we ran for office, we ran on, yes, fixing roads, but we also ran on improving access to education and skills training. We ran on expanding access to quality health care, and we ran on fighting climate change and cleaning up our drinking water. So I want to quickly go through how those priorities are also reflected in this year's budget. Before that, let me give you some context. More than 80% of the budget in the state of Michigan, the general fund budget, meaning the budget that we have discretion over how it's spent. These are not restricted funds that are restricted in very specific ways, like whether by the feds or some other entity or some other rule. About 80% of that money goes to healthcare, protecting vulnerable people, children and families, public safety, and education. So that's where we're spending the overwhelming majority of our resources from our general fund. One of the issues, though, is that the amount of resources available to us in that pile basically hasn't changed in 20 years. And for most of you, I think you would agree that your life experience has shown you that the cost of almost everything has changed in 20 years. If you had the same amount of resources that you did 20 years ago, you'd be able to do less with those resources. This is this sort of stagnation of this pile of discretionary funds that's really happened over the last 20 years. And to put that in perspective, if the general fund would have just grown at the rate of inflation, we'd have 50% more in it. We'd have $5.5 billion more dollars that we'd be able to invest in things like healthcare, education, and yes, roads in an ongoing way. Now, why do we have this downward pressure? We have downward pressure also on the general fund. That's not just about the fact that it's been at the same level for 20 years. The day before we were sworn into office, in a virtual sense, the last day of the session, the last legislative session, $1.3 billion were spent in one day by the outgoing legislature. There are also a number of lawsuits against the Snyder administration that are outstanding, that we are working to settle. But it's not clear exactly how much money we're going to be on the hook for, but it will be hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion, that we need to be able to pay to people to settle these lawsuits. And then finally, about $2 billion have been diverted from the general fund for a number of other purposes. So we just have work to do, and we have this downward pressure, so there's a shrinking pot to spend on these priorities. The other thing I want to speak to is the sort of timeline, how the budget process works. I want to highlight this for you because that's changed given the agreement that we signed with the legislature this past December. So basically, the governor introduced the budget earlier this month, her recommendation for the budget. We are now have begun negotiations with the legislature about that budget. And we will continue through this in May. There's something called a revenue estimating conference, which basically where a bunch of experts get together and they determine how much money we're going to have to be able to allocate for this budget. And then in June, we'll do final negotiations. And on July 1st, now by statute, the legislature is supposed to deliver the budget to the governor. Now, the reason this is important is because the state fiscal year actually starts on October 1st. And last year, we went all the way up to September 30th and actually, unfortunately, got really close to a state government shutdown because the negotiations had fallen apart. This is giving us more breathing room on the negotiation piece, but it also, more importantly, a lot of cities, a lot of counties, a lot of school districts have fiscal years that actually run July 1 to June 30. And so by moving this date up, we're trying to be able to enable these other entities to plan by knowing what the state budget is going to look like. So we're trying to do something that we think is more transparent and hopefully more accountable to our local partners. Now let me talk about some of these priorities. Education is a big one. It's a core tenet. We have proposed making a generational investment in K-12 education, $415 million. That's the most that's been spent in a single fiscal year in 20 years, an entire generation of students. It's really structured in a way that, one, recognizes that different districts have different needs, that it costs more money. The research shows that it costs more resources to educate children who are fighting with persistent poverty every day. It also increases funding for children who have special needs. It increases funding for children who may be at risk of or engaged in risky behaviors. It increases funding for career and technical education programs and support. Importantly, it expands access to preschool. That's really critical because the research shows that those are the most efficient and the best education dollars to be spent. Early childhood educational experiences. So this expands access to early childhood education for thousands of people and thousands of families in the state of Michigan. In last year's budget, we also tripled the number of literacy coaches that the state funds at the county level, at the RESA level or ISD level. Well, we're building on that investment by now increasing the funding for training for those literacy coaches. And a lot of this is about not only increasing our baseline literacy rates in the state, but also in helping families prepare for the implementation of this third grade reading law, which should be very clear, we think is sloppy and dangerous. Now, this will help people, we are working with philanthropic partners to understand how to navigate this system, to prepare their children for success, but also to actually make choices for kids in terms of how we can help them learn how to read rather than merely punish them for the literacy rates that they may have. And last but certainly not least, just highlight here, I married a teacher. Like, teaching's a really hard job, like really hard. I could never, ever be a teacher. And a lot of teachers, they don't get into that job because they're going to get wealthy. They get in that job because they love improving people's prospective future. They love investing time in the relationships that they build with their students. And often that means teachers coming out of pocket to buy things for their classroom. So what we have put forward is a state-funded program that will enable a teacher supply reimbursement of up to $250 for teachers who are buying things for everything from markers to posters to additional books to software to devices and everything in between. We believe that teachers who are making that type of investment in their classroom, we want to meet them and let them know that that's something that we're going to help them not have to come out of pocket for at least so much. When it comes to supporting jobs and the economy, we think about this in terms of the economy of today and the economy of tomorrow. We've done a number of things on this front. One of the big ones is that last year we were able to announce the creation of 11,000 jobs in the automotive sector, mostly in automotive manufacturing. And that's more than the last, I think, 5 administrations like combined. The newest, the first new car plant in Detroit in the last 30 years. These investments that companies are choosing Michigan to build because they're building on the expertise that we have. We have the highest concentration of engineers in Southeast Michigan than any part of the country. We have skilled and talented and experienced people. And these companies are choosing Michigan to make these investments for the future of our economy and the future of work. We talk about this Michigan Mobility Challenge. It's a challenge that we issued that's aligned with the auto show, which is going to be happening in June now. It'd be nice to go to the auto show when it's not cold. But the companies that have responded to and been the finalists for this Michigan Mobility Challenge, it's really exciting because this is about making the future of connected and autonomous transportation accessible to people, to give people a chance to experience that in real life. That's going to include things like people being able to take an autonomous vehicle, like a car with no driver, from the airport to downtown to go to the auto show. I actually had the chance to, at the Consumer Electronics Show in January, ride in a taxi that has no driver, that's built by a company called Yandex, that is testing their technology right now to be deployed in June. And the good thing about cars with no drivers, for somebody like me, a lot more leg room behind the driver's seat. But it was amazing. Seriously, I'm in this car. There's no driver. It changes lanes. It makes left turns into oncoming traffic. I rode in one for 15 minutes. It was pretty extraordinary. So people are going to have a chance to touch and feel and experience these things. I think most of them for the first time. But we're showing again that this technology is being deployed on real streets in a real context here in Michigan at the auto show for the world to see. And we're very excited about that. I also want to talk about a program called Michigan Reconnect. So in the State of the State last year, one of the things that we announced is the governor set a goal that said that, you know what, we talk to these companies every day, and they say that they need more people with highly specialized skill sets. We know y'all got generally talented people, we need specific training. And so we set a goal that said that, okay, we're gonna shoot for the moon here. 60% of adults across the state of Michigan, we want them to be able to have some sort of credential after they graduate high school. It can be a college degree, a bachelor's, master's. It can be an associate's degree from a community college. It can be some sort of professional training or certification in some specific or particular technical skill. But some credential that's a public statement and demonstration that you know how to do something or a set of things. I am thankful, and I want to recognize the county executive, Dave Coulter, who in his state of the county, which was like last week or the week before last, he probably gives a lot of those, but last week, when he actually announced that Oakland County was going to go bigger. Oakland County was going to help us get to 60% by shooting for the county to hit 80%. And that is exactly the kind of bold leadership that we need from our partners. So thank you, County Executive Coulter, for stepping up in that way. The Michigan Reconnect program helps us meet that goal by saying we will provide a tuition-free pathway for adults who want to seek some sort of professional certification or who want to seek some sort of associate's degree from a community college. The state will be your partner to help you get that skill because it's a priority for us. The last two things on here related to expanding access to childcare. For those of you who are parents, you know that childcare is really like an enabling thing for you to work on a basic level. If you have a place that you can take your children that you trust, you're not worried about them when you're at work. Or if your child, because you know what happens, like your day falls apart if your child care provider gets sick. If they can't go to a family member's house, then you have to change up your whole day immediately. I had to do that yesterday, actually, when my child care provider, her kids were sick. So this is a real thing, and we're expanding access to affordable childcare, reliable childcare, and making sure that that's available for families, as well as ensuring that people have affordable houses by places where they actually want to work. When it comes to expanding access to healthcare, we did a number of things. So we are actually proposing enabling 12 weeks of paid parental leave for state employees. That's a big deal. That's not a policy that exists today. This actually is mirroring something that the Trump administration has implemented for federal employees through the National Defense Reauthorization Act. This is personal to me. I actually took paternity leave when my daughter was born last June to sort of be a model that I think fathers should spend time with their families when they either have given birth to or adopt young children. We also have additional funding that we're making available for what we call healthy moms and healthy babies. Michigan has a really tragic maternal mortality rate. And that maternal mortality rate is even higher when we're talking about black women. It's actually 3 times as higher for black women versus non-black women who are likely to die due to pregnancy-related causes. So we've announced a number of things to address this, including a partnership with the Michigan State School of Nursing and the Detroit Medical Center to explore things like implicit bias when it comes to the delivery of medical care. How are we responding to black women when they say that they are in pain? Is that different than we're responding to other women? We also are expanding the care available to mothers who are Medicaid eligible after they give birth. Right now, if you are Medicaid eligible and you give birth to a baby, you have Medicaid covered access to postnatal care for 2 months. That's typically like not enough for postnatal care. So we are proposing expanding that to a full year of coverage for Medicaid eligible mothers. I talked about expanding access to child care. We also are making some investments so that seniors can age in place rather than having to go to nursing homes and assisted living facilities, which is a thing that when I talk to seniors every day, and that's something that they really want to do. It's a point of pride to maintain their independence for as long as they can. It's easier and more accessible for their family members who want to support their family members who are aging in place. And so making sure that people have more access to do that. And then finally, really reining in the cost of prescription drugs. It's one of the number one things we hear about how much can prescription drugs just continue to skyrocket in cost, and it's causing people to make these choices between their medicine and their food, or their medicine and their rent, or their medicine and their kids. So we want to make sure that that's possible. I talked about the Healthy Moms, Healthy Babies piece already. Last but not least, talking about cleaning up our drinking water. Last year's budget, we put forward $120 million in one-time investments for research on PFAS, for replacing lead service lines, for ensuring that people had the infrastructure to support healthy drinking water. We're doing a number of other things as well. We put forward school infrastructure grants to the tune of $40 million, building on some programs we put forward last year to help schools upgrade their systems, their buildings, their water systems. That's important because one of the places where kids are often exposed to lead and heavy contaminants is in old school buildings. So actually enabling these buildings to increase. We also have a fund that we've set up for communities that need to deal with the immediate impacts of climate change. You have seen on the news, we have a number of parts of the state that are dealing with, elevated water levels, erosion when it comes to lakes and rivers, and that's impacting properties, impacting values, and so we have a fund that's set up at the state level to help them respond to that. Because this is, again, about making sure that we can protect the beauty and the vitality of the state of Michigan so that our children can enjoy it and our children's children can enjoy it as well. This is what we're trying to do. These are the priorities that we put forward this year, and we need help to make sure these things happen. Every person in this room, every member of this chamber, every person connected to someone in this room has a tremendous network of influence, whether that is your colleagues and counterparts in the business community, your family members, the relationships you have as leaders in your communities. We need you to work with us to advance these priorities, because we believe these are priorities that everyone in Michigan shares. Making sure that our environment is healthy and supports life. Making sure that everyone has access to the healthcare they need to be productive. Ensuring that people have access to the education and training to prepare them to be full participants in the economy of today and tomorrow. And yes, good roads and good infrastructure are good for business. If you help us, we can get these things done. And when we do, we will all be even more proud of the great state of Michigan than we are right now. We will be even more proud of our communities because of what we can build and because of what this infrastructure enables for our life. It will ensure that people will continue to be as imaginative as possible when they're thinking about the future they want to build here in Michigan, rather than fighting with the scarcity of a broken infrastructure and broken resources and broken promises. Help us by stepping up and making this happen and stand tall for the entire state of Michigan. Thank you so much, Troy Chamber, for having me, and let's get to work.
So speaking of the damn roads, Nolan had some issues getting here, and his Waze told him it would take over an hour, so he is not going to be joining us today. So that is quite all right, because we have a fantastic person stepping in for this. Irene, I cannot thank you enough. And I found your bio online, so that just tells you how wonderfully quick we are. One thing I do want to reiterate, and I actually want to leave you with a quote. My favorite quote is, "You can't shake hands with a clenched fist." And why I say that is it's not about Republican, it's not about Democrat. What the Troy Chamber stands for is all businesses and connecting each other. It's about having a voice. It doesn't mean it's one-sided. So when we call a Republican, call a Democrat too. Let's call each other. So we're all on one page working together. So at this time, I would like to invite our panel up and introduce our wonderful moderator for the day, Irene Spanos from Oakland University. She is the Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations. I think that's correct. She was appointed the Director of the Department of Economic Development and Community Affairs by Oakland County back in 2011, and now serves for OU. As the director, she oversaw the operation and the department of its 6 divisions: business development, attraction, retention, planning, finance, workforce development, marketing, and communication. She also helped with the One Stop Shop Small Business Center and community and home improvement. Before her appointment, she spent 7 years with the county as a senior business development representative, and she is also a member of the Swedish, German, and French American Chamber of Commerce, Southfield's Healthcare Corridor Board. You pretty much do everything, so we're good to go. I'm going to give it to you.
You can hear me, right? There we go. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be a moderator. You can call me Nolan, or you can call me Irene. But really, when Tara asked me to do this, it was a natural fit. I know the panelists, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with them. So let me introduce them one by one for you. First, Mayor Ethan Baker. Please join me up here. Welcome. Mayor Baker was elected in November 2019. He's been a principled and dedicated public servant committed to a robust and growing business environment, along with safe and community-centered neighborhoods for individuals and families. Welcome.
Thank you.
Next on our panel is County Executive Dave Coulter. Yeah. Welcome, David. Yeah, really nice to see you again. David is honored to serve as Oakland County's 3rd county executive. Dave brings a wealth of local government and executive experience. He represented Southeast Oakland County on the Board of Commissioners from 2002 to 2010. That's where we first met. Where he was well respected by colleagues on both sides of the aisle. I can attest to that. While on the board as a member of the Finance Committee, which oversaw Oakland County's balanced budget, 3-year budget, and started an innovative program that provided health insurance to over 5,000 residents. Thank you for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
And finally, a good friend, Senior Vice President of MEDC, but you're my friend first. Christine Rader joined the Michigan Economic Development Corporation in 2001 and was recently named the Senior Vice President of Growth and Development prior to that. She served as Vice President of Retention and Growth. In these leadership roles, she has managed large teams responsible for developing relationships with businesses and communities across the state, as well as overseeing expansion and attraction opportunities. When I first started in economic development, Christine and I did retention calls right here in Troy. So that's where we first started. So thank you all. So we're going to talk about our city, our state, and our county.
Cool.
Who should I start with first? Let's see. Let's start with the mayor. Mayor,
All
I see
right.
a lot of development happening here in Troy. What are some of the areas you're focused on that you want to see in Troy develop here?
If I can, really quickly, I just want to thank, we are a team in the city of Troy. We've got some city council members here. Councilmember Ellen Hoderick, Ann Erickson Galt, and Teresa Brooks are here from council. We work
Wonderful.
together.
Welcome.
I want to welcome them and thank them. Also, our city attorney, Lori Bloom, community affairs director, Cindy Stewart, assistant city manager, Bob Bruner is out here, and I think city manager, Mark Miller is here somewhere as well. So
Great.
we do it all together.
It's
I
a
had to give
team.
them credit.
Totally agree.
Development is always the big issue in Troy. We are definitely development driven for a number of reasons. I think, as you know, we are I like to say we're the big center of Oakland County, and with the business and as far as property values and tax revenue, we are a huge component. It depends on what your needs are. We have space for world headquarters. We have small businesses. Whatever you want to build and come and do in Troy, come work with us. We have a great economic development team that really makes a difference. And as you know, I mean, we've got mom and pop small businesses. We've got huge companies that employ thousands and thousands of people in the city of Troy. Our daytime population is upwards of 160 to 170,000 people, because people know what it's like to come into the city. But when you're dealing with development, as you know, the lieutenant governor spoke quite a bit about a lot of things, and actually I know he had to leave, but thank God he's so tall. I felt like Mike Bloomberg, and it was very scary for me. No, now we all can feel like normal-sized people up here. But
What are we supposed to say?
Well, no, that's okay, though,
5 foot footers.
but
If you guys feel short.
we talked just briefly, the infrastructure is so important to development, and we're very fortunate in Troy to have fantastic infrastructure. We've really focused a lot over the several years, spending millions of dollars on our roads when we couldn't get it from the county or the state. We did a lot of that on our own, but I think businesses are definitely attracted to Troy because of our infrastructure that we have in place, as well as our schools and our neighborhoods and our good, friendly, diverse
And
population.
I can add to that, because when I was doing business development throughout Europe, companies would know Troy. I mean, they might not know Michigan as a state, but they knew Troy for some reason. So you've done a very good job in having that diverse international presence here in Troy. Okay, next, Deputy County Executive Coulter.
Not deputy.
Executive, County Executive.
got demoted.
Sorry.
I just got demoted.
No. Executive. I'm just going to call you Dave, because I know you as Dave. We worked together when he was the mayor of Ferndale, and he was one of the first county commissioners that I met when I came to the county. He's always been very, very helpful, very supportive. So there's a lot happening in Oakland County that you've been working on.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the strategic plan that you're working on now, and what prompted that, and what you hope to see the outcome be?
Yeah, we just launched a new planning process for a new economic development strategic plan. And you know, a lot of people look at that like, you know, Oakland County does economic development really well, and we do. But what we have to make sure is that we're looking out 5 and 10 years into the future. The last economic plan we did was actually about 20 years ago, and a lot of great things came out of that. The Emerging Sectors Program, the Medical Main Street, and those things. But as we all know, the world is changing dramatically, and the opportunities tomorrow are not the same as yesterday. So we're focused on doing a new strategic plan for our economic development area. It's going to be done like in March-ish. But as I announced at my State of the County, one area that we know that we're going to focus on and that will be a bigger priority in that plan is around the defense and aerospace industry. It is obvious to us, even before that plan is done, that there is so much more opportunity in that space. Oakland County currently gets about $300 million a year in defense work and jobs. And so we've been really looking at that and saying, how can we do better? Because we're falling behind even other Midwestern states. And the irony is that we've never been better poised in Washington to get more of those resources. We have Senator Gary Peters on the Senate Armed Services Committee. We have 3 people in Congress from Michigan on the House Armed Services Committee, including our own Alyssa Slotkin. We have Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence on appropriations. So we have firepower in Washington now. And so we have set a goal of going from $300 million a year today to, by 2025, getting $1 billion in defense and aerospace work in Oakland County. And so that's going to be a huge focus of ours. But the other part of that plan, and this is born out of my experience as mayor of Ferndale, but I see this all over the county, is I want to make sure that we're not just attracting international and national companies to Oakland County, but that we're doing everything that we can to help small businesses grow, or maybe individual entrepreneurs to start a business, because that's a huge that's going to be huge going forward as well. You know, if any of you eat Garden Fresh salsa, I hope you do.
We do.
That's from Ferndale, and it was started by 2 people that I know, Jack and Annette Aronson, in the back of their little shop. And then the next thing you know, they had this great recipe, and then they grew it, and then they needed a building, and then they needed another building, and then they needed a bigger business, and they are now the largest producer of fresh salsa in the world. They're Ferndale's largest employer. But what they needed, and they got from the county, was assistance in growing their business. So sometimes it's easier and more successful to help what you have grow. So the plan will include part of that as well.
That's great. That's amazing. And I do eat a lot of salsa, so I'm glad they're doing well.
Eat Garden Fresh.
Yeah, I'm a good customer. Christine, now we're going to the state level. And state, you know, when we work in, especially some of the large economic development projects, there's a lot of competition. How is Michigan faring in the competition, and what can we do to make us even more competitive so that those jobs and that investment come to our state?
Thanks, Irene. So in the role that I'm in today at the MEDC, I oversee our international attraction and our business retention. About 80% of our pipeline of deals at any one time is companies that are already here in Michigan that are looking for opportunities to grow. But because they're global companies, they don't necessarily just have to stay here. So oftentimes we're competing with other states, with other countries, certainly other provinces in Ontario. So we do need to come to the table quite often with something that's going to keep them here, keep them growing here, or then attracting them if they are a company that's not in Michigan. We do that by first selling the state of Michigan and the assets that we have. So we always start with that in the conversation of, you know, we have the largest pool of engineering talent in the world. We have, you know, the brains and the heart and soul of the auto industry. We've got the grit of the work ethic that we have here in Michigan is not matched by any other manufacturing state in the country by far, if you look at production levels and the productivity of our workforce. So we always come to the table with that. That sometimes is not enough when you're competing with global opportunities, and that's when we have to dip into financial incentives, unfortunately. So the MEDC has a toolbox of different tools that we're able to bring to the table, whether it's something that they might need to help close a gap with the competing state, or it's something where they say, oh, we need help with finding people, and maybe you could help us with a job fair, or finding the talent, get us connected to one of the universities to help with that talent pipeline. So it just depends. So the toolbox when it comes to incentives is different today than it was 3 months ago. We've lost a couple of tools that we had that were extremely important in the last few years of attracting and growing business here. One of them is the Good Jobs for Michigan program, which sunsetted at the end of 2019. A company just around the corner here called Aptiv. It's a global mobility and technology company. They, after about 9 to 10 months of almost daily conversations with them, and they're headquartered in Ireland, we were able to get them to decide that they were going to bring 500 new jobs to the city of Troy. And these are high-paying jobs, the kind of jobs that certainly the city of Troy likes to see come into their community in Oakland County. The tool that got us to win that deal was the Good Jobs for Michigan tool. So if we got a call today from Aptiv, I don't know how we would have fared. I'm certain that we would have lost it, only because there were 2 other states that they were highly engaged in that had incentive offers. And it really did come down to that. They really matched up on all the other things, or Michigan maybe, one of the competing sites was Pittsburgh, where Carnegie Mellon's doing a lot in mobility. So that's the day in and day out work that your economic developers do, whether it's Glenn Lapin in Troy or the Oakland County team. And Charlene Avery's here from the, Charlene Page, I'm sorry, not Charlene. Charlene Avery worked at MEDC like 30 years ago. So Charlene Page is here. So we have a strong team, but that's what we deal with day in and day out. So it's really competitive.
Thank you. So Mayor, what keeps you up at night? What's one thing that keeps you up at night about
Well,
your
my
job?
wife's here, but I don't think that's what you meant.
Now, what keeps you up at night about your role in the city of Troy? What's one thing that keeps you up at night and you say, if I had a magic wand, I would fix this?
Well, ironically, when I was running for council in 2015, that was the question that I asked our former and disgraced city manager, Brian Kishnick, who's in prison right now. So, and that is kind of what keeps me up now, thinking about how we recover from that. Brian Kishnick's in prison, and we've had a big turnover in council, and a great leader in Mark Miller coming forward as the city manager. But we are still dealing with the ramifications of that time period. And although we've got a great new team on council, every decision we're making now is still, there's a lot of cleanup involved with what happened in the past. I don't think, fortunately, it's really affecting our business community, which is fantastic. And when you look at our numbers and our data, all of our vacancy rates have gone down and everything over the past 4 years. Troy is humming along really well. And we don't offer financial incentives as a city. We don't need to. We incentivize by having the schools that we have, the infrastructure that we have, the mayor and council that we have, I'll say. The team that we have at our city is really fantastic. But keeping me up is definitely how do we rebuild trust in our city and with the residents, but also businesses, because there's a lot of confusion related to the crime, unfortunately, that happened.
I think you're on your way.
We're doing okay.
You're doing good.
Thank you.
Okay, next question.
Same question?
Same question. What keeps you up at night, being county executive?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's changed from when I was mayor. So I was thinking about that with my mayor's hat on. And the thing that kept me up the most was this sort of societal erosion of trust in our law enforcement that we see across the country, and I worried that it could just be one incident or one spark that could start something. I was mayor when Ferguson happened and Baltimore happened and those things, and those really did keep me up. And we worked really closely with our police department to make sure that we were doing what they term community policing, that they were getting in the community, they were getting their face out there, and they were getting well known. And so I'm really proud that we initiated that there. I don't oversee the sheriff's department, so that's now the sheriff's concern to stay up at night. I guess in all honesty, what keeps me up is it's a huge responsibility to be the Oakland County executive, and I'm very fortunate that I'm stepping into a job that has a great foundation I kid the county executive of Wayne, Warren Evans, because when he took office, they had a jail that was like a third built, and they didn't know what to do with it. They had a $100 million deficit and all these issues. I walked into a AAA bond rating and a 3-year balanced budget, so nothing like that. So the biggest fear is, in addition to the things that I think we need to be looking forward to and challenging ourselves in, I don't want to screw up the foundation. Don't screw this up, Dave. In all honesty, because the progress that we want to make is built on the foundation that we already have, and so for me, it's a double-edged thing of, yes, I want to do more in terms of the education and the healthcare, but we have to build it on a sound financial base, and so don't screw that up. That keeps me up.
And Christine, what keeps you up at night?
So I would say that I have 2 young daughters, and I think that I'd love them to find jobs when they are out of school. So knowing that the work that we're doing as economic developers, making sure we have the environment where we still have job growth and job opportunities here is one thing, but it's another thing for today to have the skilled talent and the training that's needed to keep workers doing the jobs they're doing and training them to do the jobs of tomorrow as well as the jobs of next week. Because pretty much every company our team walks into these days, there's an issue with talent. They've got 50 job openings, they can't find anyone. Engineering talent, while we are the largest base of that, there's a lot of skilled trades jobs that are going unfilled, and many of you are business owners and are dealing with that in your companies, I'm sure. So I think that as Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist mentioned, the investment in K-12 is extremely important. The investment and major props to Oakland schools, because they have an incredible career and educational tech program. Also, the Michigan Works system here in Oakland County, I would venture to say, is the best in the state. And I would say that if all the other parts of the state were here, because they know that you really are the gold standard.
Program.
And the Troy Michigan Works office is one of the best in Oakland County. So, it's just, you do have an excellent, we are kind of spoiled here in Oakland County a bit, because this is where people want to live, work, and play. So the disadvantaged areas of the state struggle a lot more than that. The areas that are 50 miles or more from an interstate, they can't get the kids to stay. They can't get the kids to come back. So those are the kind of things. You don't want to have ghost towns in Michigan in 25 or 30 years. We need internet connectivity. We need jobs for all corners of the state, and not just summer jobs for tourism. So those are the kind of things. So my
you
team
don't
and
sleep
I.
much at night. With all these worries.
Oh, Irene,
don't
come on, you know me, we're friends. I do sleep.
Talking about workforce, and since I'm with Oakland University, what role do you see community colleges and universities playing in economic development in the future? I mean, my office is right in the middle of campus, so every morning I see the students going to class, and I look at them, I'm like, oh my God, we got to keep each and every one of you here upon graduation. And every opportunity I get in the Oakland Center when there are kids just, not students, not kids, students sitting at a table and talking, I'll go up to them and I'll say, so what are you guys doing? You're going to stay here in Michigan, right? Yeah. So the economic development hat's always on my head, because we need to keep the talent here. But what role do you see universities and colleges, community colleges, playing in the future growth of Troy?
Well, a huge role, hopefully. I mean, we talk about everybody, we have great high schools, they go away to college, and then we hope and pray that they come back to Troy. But I think the thing that Troy does right, and it's the business community that's making it, in conjunction with the colleges and universities in the area, there's such a talent pool in these schools that the more good businesses and jobs we can have in Troy, they don't have to go far to find talent. So we have the talent, and I think that any formal and informal working together between the universities and the partnerships. Thank you. That's what's going to make the difference, because we have jobs that need to be filled in Troy like we do all over the state. But people know that the kids that are coming out of Troy especially are smart and good students, and if they can stay and reinvest in the city that they grew up in, I think that's better for all of us.
It's better for all of us. Yeah. Dave, what role do you see colleges and universities playing in the county's future?
And you talked about the talent pipeline. It's huge. I've done a lot of visits around businesses around the county, and I hear at almost every one, we'd hire more people if there were more people skilled and trained in what we do. And so it's a huge issue if we're going to continue to be successful going forward. And it's a big reason that, as the Lieutenant Governor said, we took a look at this state program, which was, their goal is 60% by 2030 of people having a post-secondary degree or certification, right? And so that's important too, because you mentioned colleges and community colleges and universities, but it's also the skilled trades and the other things. So when we brought the colleges together, we also brought the labor folks together as well, because there's apprenticeship programs that we can do. And so but we need to encourage that. It doesn't happen by accident. I was surprised when we started looking at the numbers in Oakland County that when we looked at the governor's plan, we were one of only 9 states that hadn't set a goal. And it's the kind of thing that if you're not intentional about and you're not trying to bend the curve towards, it doesn't just happen by itself. So when we brought everybody together to say, what should our goal in Oakland County be? We didn't pick 80% because Dave said that 80% was the right number. We asked our partners, our education partners and our labor partners, if we're really gonna push this, what can we do and how are we gonna do it? And you mentioned one of the big reasons is we have to give kids more support in college, not just to get into college, but to actually graduate. Too many kids don't graduate. Too many high school students don't have access to tuition assistance that they need. Career and technical education, we're not pushing kids towards that. And so there's a number of strategies that we've developed that we think can get Oakland County to 80% of our adults with a post-secondary degree or certification by 2030. But it's going to be difficult and it needs to be intentional.
What are we at now?
We're at about 60%. So that's what happened. We looked at the number and said, okay, so do we just rest on our laurel and say we're already there, we won't do anything special for the next 10 years? No, we're going to help drive the state numbers up even higher. So, yeah.
Thank you.
By the way, we're second in Michigan. We're the number 2 county. This hurts my heart because Washtenaw is the first county, and I went to Michigan State. So being second to Ann Arbor does not make me feel good. We're going to beat Ann Arbor.
I love it. Thank you. Christine?
So the University Research Corridor is a group that we work really closely with. It's the research universities in addition to the other universities like Oakland that do a lot of technology transfer. So that's an important part of our what we're doing with universities. As far as the skill gap in the training, when you think of CTE and you know that there are waiting lists all over Oakland County in most districts of students that want to be doing CTE, but there aren't enough seats available, it's a funding issue. If we had more people that would go into doing that type of work and that type of teaching, it's a struggle. My husband actually is an educator in Royal Oak, so I hear it every day because I come home and say, gosh darn it, I wish you guys would educate the kids so that they would want to do skilled trades. And he's like, we have 85 students on the waiting list right now to get into the Oakland School CTE program. That's a tragedy to me. I mean, that's 85 kids that would be getting a skill, be getting some type of credential potentially within a couple years of getting out of high school that they can't get because there's not enough room for them here in Oakland County. So these are some challenges that we have, but this is, again, as I've said before, this is the fortunate county. This is the county that, that we have a lot more going here than we do in other parts of the state. So I think that, working more collaboratively with the community colleges, and the high schools and the K-12 beyond just manufacturing day, doing something a lot more than just one day of a focus on manufacturing, I think that would be a tremendous benefit to the whole state.
And at the university, we're seeing a lot of customized training coming out of the university for professional and continuing education because companies want to keep their workforce competitive and skilled. So we're seeing a lot of that coming through the university too. So we're seeing that trend, but wonderful. Okay, before I open it up to the audience for questions, is there one last thing you want to share with the audience about Troy? One thing that's coming up maybe, or something that you want to promote, or
let's think about that.
Yeah.
I have to go first again, so hold on.
You want me to go first?
No, yeah, listen, Troy is,
you
I'm listening to the Lieutenant Governor, and we've got Christine, and we've got Dave. Troy really is lucky. I mean, we're in the best county, in the best part of the state, so we don't face a lot of the struggles that these other communities do, and that makes it easier for us to do our job, I think, but there are always risks in that. Like you're worried about messing things up. I just said all of our vacancy rates have gone down, everything's good. What happens? And what happens if, right? So I think that we've got a lot going on in Troy. Like we said, we're dealing with cleanup on some of the past issues, but we're really focused on getting out in our community and having the residents and the businesses and the developers and everybody come together and try to figure out what's best, because people do live, work, and play, and not just Oakland County, but Troy specifically. We have some of everything. And we always have to find the right balance of what that is to everybody and how we can keep that going in a good way. And I'm very optimistic about Troy's future and what we're doing. And I know that you've got big shoes to fill, and you're working hard at that. And I attended your State of the County. And like you said, Oakland County is great, but it doesn't mean we can't go higher and work harder. And Troy's the same way. So we're always looking for good, innovative ideas. And the Troy Chamber puts together great events, and it's a great group of businesses and a huge part of our community. And we thank all of you for being a part of Troy and for employing people, for living here, many of you do, and for keeping us the powerhouse that we are. So thank you.
Dave?
I would just say that, and we've referenced a number of times how solid Oakland County is, in many ways the gold standard around the county, and yet that doesn't mean that there aren't gaps that exist, and that doesn't mean that there aren't areas for improvement. And I'm just going to touch on two really quickly because I know we want to get to questions. But number one, our county seat is Pontiac, and I think, having been the former mayor of Ferndale, where we worked really hard on redeveloping that community, I think there's so much potential there. They're already doing a decent job of attracting development there. Amazon is going to come there, United Shore, Hawk Construction, a bunch of wonderful companies. But I think we also need to be more intentional about helping to lift up our county seat and making Pontiac a more vibrant and successful city. I think it'll help attract our young people who are looking for a more urban experience. We don't want them all to move to Midtown in Detroit. We'd like to keep some of them right here in Pontiac, if that's the lifestyle that they want. And then related to that, I'm just going to throw this out there. I happen to be a transit advocate, and I believe that there's a great need for transit, and that belief has only increased since I've been county executive, for economic development reasons, to get our workers to the places where they can't get today, to keep young people in our area, and for lots of reasons. I think we need to do a better job at the transit system that we have.
Thank you. Christine?
About Troy?
No, about the state of Michigan.
Okay.
You can talk about Troy, though. Go ahead.
I was all about Troy.
Your job.
I know, wait a minute.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm not a resident. You could convince me, though, I think, right? The state, we're kind of at the budget, the priorities that the Lieutenant Governor laid out, that is the vision that a lot of that plays into economic development, as he said. So whether it's education, infrastructure, healthcare, all of that plays into quality of life, which is what we talk about with companies every day. So if we don't have all of the pillars, whether it's the transit of Southeast Michigan, being able to get people from pockets of where the labor is out to the pockets where the jobs are in some instances, that can be a challenge. But just kind of always focusing on all of these pillars, they all make such a difference. Our strategic plan is focused on fostering high wage growth, but also fostering skilled trades and making sure that we have the ladders of education. So you can start here. But 3-4 years from now, we want you to be here. We don't want to incent jobs that keep people at this whatever level, at that stage.
Yeah.
So it's just focusing on the holistic kind of approach with economic development.
Great, thank you. Okay, now's the time. Does anybody have any questions out in the audience? Yes.
There was a politician that ran before, and I don't remember who it was, but I remember he kept talking about hot for politics. So as we're talking about wanting to get more revenue in, whether it's for our roads or the schools or infrastructure, what is happening with that revenue that's currently coming in, and what do you plan to do?
My answer is easy. We opted out in Troy, so there is no revenue coming in for marijuana directly to Troy. And our potholes are getting filled, so.
Part of the problem is we're not going to see the amount of money that everybody dreams we're going to see, and B, there's going to be unintended consequences that are going to require investments in other areas. So it's not this, it's sort of like the lottery for education. Everybody said, well, we all the lottery money goes to education. Yeah, it does, but it's a drop in the bucket. And so compared to the needs of our infrastructure right now, the marijuana revenue will be a small percentage of that, even if it was totally dedicated to it, frankly.
We do have projects that are coming into the state looking to do, giant grow houses, and, the utilities love that because there's a lot of power needed for that.
Yeah.
So your colleagues at DT Energy and Consumers
Do they
will
love that? Did I see the
Oh,
DTE
yeah, see,
guy
DTE?
here?
You love those. But we can't really provide any resources or help with those types of operations because it's still against federal law to do that. So a lot of our programs do receive federal funding, little pieces of it and some of it. So we're not able to really do much in that area. So I don't really have.
Okay, any other questions for our panelists? Yes.
So in a lot of Oakland County, first-time home buyers are up against the wall
Yeah.
because there's no new construction that they can afford.
Yep.
Or there's no new construction for first-time homeowners to move into without making that huge jump.
Yes.
And I know that part of the problem is lack of trades, but there's other issues with what the builders have to go through that raises costs. I mean, is there a plan in place? Is there some thought about what we can do for the first-time home buyers to find homes for them
Yep.
where they're not paying 50% of their income to their mortgage?
So it's become a huge issue for us in Oakland County. Affordable housing is a major issue. The Lieutenant Governor mentioned it as a state issue. It's a huge issue here as well. We did some research that showed that 27% of homeowners in Oakland County have what they call cost burdens, which is they're spending too big of a percentage of their income on housing needs and neglecting other things. That number jumps to 41% of African American homes and 45% of renters. So it's not just homeowners, it's people who want to rent a townhouse or an apartment here as well. And we haven't, frankly, addressed that issue as directly as we can. We've taken one step already, which I did announce in my State of the County, which is previously we get HUD and home funds from the federal government to help with housing affordability, but it exclusively 100% went to homeowners. Now, so this might not make you happy because your question was about homeowners, but we know renters have twice the burden. So we're going to make sure that those funds get distributed more broadly so that you can be a homeowner or a renter. But the long-term solution, frankly, is to build more affordable housing, and we're exploring ways that maybe we can incentivize that. Because there just isn't enough affordable housing in this county for all the people that want to live here, which is partly why 40% of the people that work in Oakland County don't live here. A big reason for that is A, they can't get here, and B, they can't afford to be here. So it's a huge economic issue for us, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Okay. Well, I'm getting a sign that our session is over. I'm observant to that.
There she is.
I'm here.
I want to thank our panelists. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me this morning. A last minute for me, but it was great talking to you.
Irene,
sharing
you were great as always.
conversation.
Thank you. Give it up for Irene. Yes. Our stand-in moderator.
My pleasure.
Well, I just wanted to thank you all so much for joining us. As you can see, we are in very good hands with these leaders. They are all so dedicated to the city of Troy, to the county, and to the state, and I am so impressed and so happy that they're with us today, and I do consider most of them friends. So let's give them a big round of applause. Sorry. Right? Most of them.
I don't know.
Wow.
Well,
I know how she
Irene's
feels
still
about
new
you,
to
so
the
I'm
circle.
concerned.
But I just wanted to say thank you. You guys are the absolute best. Irene, thank you for stepping up. Nolan has been texting me questions this whole time. I'm like, she's got it, buddy. She's got it. We're good.
Irene knows what
But
she's doing.
as for the future, please check with troychamber.com for future events. We're so grateful to have you, and you guys have a great day. Thank you.